Thank you for attending our 2021 Virtual Gardening Green Expo. The Expo is sponsored by WaterSmart South Shore, the North and South Rivers Watershed Association, Kennedy's Country Gardens, Wild Ones South Shore Mass Chapter, and Edible South Shore and South Coast.
Hi, my name is Samantha Woods, and I'm the Executive Director for the North and South Rivers Watershed Association. I'd like to share with you today some information about our Greenscapes program, which is part of our WaterSmart program. And it will provide you some information we hope that will help you to protect our waters while maintaining a beautiful landscape. So let me share my screen. Okay. So as I said, today's talk is about Greenscapes, which is a program meant to create beautiful landscapes that protect our water. And it's part of the WaterSmart South Shore program. The WaterSmart South Shore program is a nonprofit partnership between the North and South Rivers Watershed Association and 12 towns on the South Shore that are listed here. Probably your town is one of them. And the goals of this program, this particular program, this Greenscapes program, are to share with you how you can better protect our water resources while maintaining your landscape. But the WaterSmart program offers lots of different educational material for both adults and for children about how we can all be better stewards of our water. So I hope you'll take advantage and go to our watersmartsouthshore.org website to find out more. And I'll refer back to that website as we go throughout the program. So, you know, some of the benefits of creating a yard that's healthy and requires minimal maintenance and is protective of nature is that it can really provide benefits to the individual. So it can increase your property values. In fact, there's studies that show that the resale value of your property could increase by 15% by installing a quality, low maintenance landscape. So that seems like a good reason to maybe think about how what you're doing in your landscape and how you can improve that. You can save money on your utilities by properly selecting and placing native plants. They can be lower costs for your heating and cooling by 20% or more, just by simply selecting trees that shed their leaves in the winter, deciduous trees for summer shade, and then evergreens for windbreaks. By far, the biggest savings, though, can come from switching from chemically treated lawn to natural turf. Savings in water costs alone, not including the chemicals and labor, can be between 35 and 50%. You know, yards are also places for our families to congregate and play, and as can be seen by these young people rolling around on the lawn. Being out in nature, as we all know, is a really great stress reliever and is proven to increase our well-being. And using the techniques that we're going to share with you today to avoid using pesticides, herbicides, and synthetic fertilizers, what we're recommending is that we can replace those replace the use of those with natural processes, and then decrease the use and exposure of pesticides to ourselves and to our pets. By putting native plants in our yard and in place of lawns, we can really bring back wildlife. Native plants attract birds, butterflies, and other wildlife that have adapted over centuries to using them as a food source. And there'll be other talks in our Gardening Green Expo that can refer you to more in depth about that. You can enjoy more free time, right? If you don't have to maintain as much. But it does take, I will not fool you, it does take some time to move to a more native landscape. So, most of us have inherited whatever landscape came with our homes. Oftentimes they were not as, they're sort of the quick fix, like sod without good soils, and not necessarily good plants. And so it may take some time to move to a more native landscape. Let's see. So I was just thinking about the time that you can save. Once it's established, it can save you this time. And according to research, converting an acre from manicured lawn to a natural landscape could save as much as $4,500 per year. Also, in a study comparing manicured lawns to natural landscapes, the natural landscapes saved 25% in labor costs and 61% for fertilizer and 44% for fuel and 22% for herbicides. So that can be a real benefit to your time and your wallet. And of course, there's the environmental reasons, which is why the watershed is interested, as well as everybody, I think. The EPA estimates that nearly 70% of the pollution in our rivers, ponds, and oceans comes from stormwater runoff. Stormwater runoff is the rain that runs across our driveways, lawns, and roads and parking lots and carries pollution into our storm drains and eventually ends up in our local waterways. The EPA estimates that 50% of all stormwater pollution is chemical pollution from the products we use on our yards. So by eliminating the use of these chemicals, we can stop them from getting into our water supplies. And, also it's a quantity issue. So we want to make sure that there's enough clean water for people and the environment. So here you can see on the left actually is a hand with a bunch of algae on it. That's a result of what we call cultural eutrophication, which is the process by which nitrogen and phosphorus enter into our waterways and fuel the growth of algae. This can be detrimental to the aquatic ecosystem and the fish that are living in it, as well as unsightly and not beneficial for recreational use. So it can really affect the quality of our water when we use too much fertilizers. And then in terms of quantity, we have a real issue here on the South Shore and throughout the eastern part of Massachusetts in terms of over-withdrawals impacting our streams because of the way that our area was developed over time as our populations have grown. We've seen a real impact from wells and the direct withdrawals of water from our streams, resulting in the drying up of our streams. And I'll share with you this sort of disturbing video that we took in the summer of 2020 during the drought last year in the Third Herring Brook, which is the border between Hanover and Norwell. This is just downstream of the wells from both of the towns of Hanover and Norwell in July of 2020. So let me just show this to you. This is fish. There were several dozen who actually were dying on the stream bed because the water had drained from this stream. This would not occur naturally. This was a result of us pulling water from a very close source to that stream. So when we use water on our lawns, we're having a direct impact on our aquatic resources. The DEP, our state's environmental agency, recommends that each person use no more than 65 gallons per person per day, yet watering lawns consumes vast quantities of water. In fact, the USGS, United States Geological Survey, points out that of the 26 billion gallons of water consumed daily in the United States, 30% is devoted to outdoor use, mostly landscaping. And in most of our communities here on the South Shore, water consumption doubles in large part due to lawn watering during the summer. So this program is really meant to help hopefully protect those water resources by hopefully giving you information to change some of the practices that you might be using in your yard to improve how the protection of our water resources. So how does one greenscape? The first, if you're using chemical pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, we would really recommend you stop doing that. Just get your lawn off drugs. Go cold turkey. Don't make a slow transition to, when you stop using synthetic lawn products, to move to a more natural regimen. One of the first things we tell people is that they want to test their soil. The foundation of any good landscape is good soil. So each one of these things that I'm going to touch upon here, there'll be further information about, but in different talks, but I'm kind of giving the big overview. So one of the biggest things to look for is the pH levels to provide the right soil conditions for nutrients to be available to our plants that we're trying to grow in that medium, that soil. And you can actually get your soil tested at the University of Massachusetts Extension Service. And it's like $20, and it provides you information that will give you some guidance on the health of your soils, whether you should be adding more lime, for instance. And then you can top dress with compost. You can put about 1/2 inch of compost on your lawn. Compost provides nutrients, but also the organic matter teeming with microbes that will make your soil more porous and nutrient rich. You want to leave your grass clippings on the lawn. It actually provides more nutrients. And it's great if you have a mulching mower. You want to overseed in the spring and the fall. That's the best time of year to do that, because when we mow, we're not letting our grass grow, to form the seed heads necessary for them to self-sow, which is why overseeding is important. And if you're going to overseed, we recommend you use a blend of fescues, which really grow deep roots and are very drought tolerant. You can also spray compost tea on your lawn once a month during the growing season to add nutrients to the soil if you need it. And there's more information on our website about how you can, make your own compost tea, or you can buy it at, either in liquid or dehydrated form at many nurseries. So those are just some tips that we would recommend to get started, particularly if you're already invested or have a service that's providing you maintenance on your landscape. And you can talk to your landscaper about doing this if you like, or you can certainly choose to go to another kind of landscaper. We would recommend going and looking up the Ecological Landscaping Association. They have it's an organization of professionals in gardeners that use natural methods. So that would be one place that you could go to look, as well as the NOFAMass.org website, which is National Organic Farming Association. They train and certify landscape professionals and gardeners about organic techniques as well. All right. So, we all have some grass. There's really not a residential landscape that I know. Very few don't have some land in turf and have grass on them. And so we're probably not going to get rid of all grass, although the more we can supplement with native plants, the better, easier it'll be to manage, I believe, ultimately. But, for the lawn that you do have, there's certain practices that you can use that will help keep your lawn healthy and thus not require so much of other supplemental help, like fertilizers and watering. A lot of the times that people are watering, it's because they haven't been maintaining the grass well. And so these are some tips for how you can maintain your grass. So, first of all, please, 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 if there's nothing else that you take away, please mow with a sharp blade. Mowing with a dull blade rips the blades of grass. Think of shaving with a dull blade. It's the same thing. We don't want our grass to be bleeding. When you use a dull blade, it's tearing and fraying and weakening it, and then it can be easily weakened and succumb to bacteria and disease and fungus, whereas grass that's cleanly cut seals the blade and makes it much more resistant to damage. So if you look closely, you can actually see the damage inflicted on your grass from a dull blade. So please stop beating your grass with a baseball bat and sharpen your mower blade after every 10 hours of use. That's a great rule of thumb. And then keep your grass high. Taller grass not only will have deeper, healthier roots, it also effectively crowds out weeds. So taller grass will help your soil retain your moisture, so watering is required less frequently. And mow often enough that you don't have to remove more than a third of the grass height at any one time. Cutting more than a third of the grass blade at a time can shock your lawn and weaken its resistance to drought, weeds, and disease. And so if the height of your lawn gets very long, cut it down to the proper height in stages and no more than a third of the total height at a time. Remember, this is a plant. This is a living organism. If you can, as I said, use a mulching mower, it creates fine grass clippings that can easily break down and add nitrogen and organic matter to your soils. And it also is composed of about 85% water, so they decompose quickly and it won't smother your lawn. So leave the clippings on the lawn. And it's about equivalent to adding one fertilizer application per season. Plus it actually helps you avoid thatch, which is an indicator of too much fertilizer. You want to mow when your lawn is dry. If the grass blades are wet, mowing can rip and tear them. So leaving them susceptible again to disease. And as I mentioned earlier, overseeding should be done annually because the mowing removes the grass seed heads before they're allowed to form. And again, fescue to the rescue. When you're going to overseed, you want to use fescues and look for Cape Cod mix is one of the more drought tolerant ones, but you can ask your local nursery for a fescue mix. And I'm going to refer you all to download our Greenscapes guide book, which gives you more information and detail about fescues and where you might be able to get them. Okay, so pesticides and herbicide alternatives. You want to prevent your lawn from becoming a drug addict, right? Insecticides, herbicides, fungicides are not required for successful landscape care, and they can be toxic and pose a health risk for you and your family, your pets, and wildlife if they're overused or carelessly applied. They can disrupt the ecological balance of the landscape by killing. Pesticides by killing the microbial life, earthworms, the beneficial insects and birds that keep bad insects in check. So good news is pesticides are not necessary for a beautiful low maintenance landscape. So you don't need it. If you look closely at the healthiest landscapes, you will see complex blend of plants and insects. Finding a few weeds or insects in your lawn is not cause for alarm. So don't be tempted to rely on pesticides as a quick fix solution to your landscape problems. Most insect and weed problems are signs that your landscape's not getting what it needs. One of the things we tell people to think about is to redefine what they consider to be a weed. Although there's lots of marketing out there that's going to try to convince you what a weed is, like clover and dandelion, these can be attractive and actually useful additions to your lawn. They add color, texture, and even provide the lawn with nutrients. They may be the only thing that's green during a drought. And regular mowing will keep these plants from taking over your lawn and making them a little less attractive to bees if that's of concern to you. Be patient. Again, that's just sort of like redefining the weed, trying to look at your landscape with a less critical eye and not be so hard on yourself or it. If you've been using a chemical program in the past or do-it-yourself or lawn treatment service, you may initially experience an increase in weeds. Again, be patient. It takes time. If you have a few weeds, eliminate them before they spread. So, the ounce of prevention cure is worth a pound of cure approach to weeds. So stop them before they seed if you don't like them. And so that's pull them out by hand, and make sure you remove the whole plant and the taproot. And you can also use full strength vinegar on stone walkways that can help to remove some of these weeds. Apply corn gluten. Corn gluten meal can help prevent weed seeds, particularly crabgrass, from germinating. It's a natural byproduct of the wet milling process of corn. And if you follow the directions on the bag, you can apply it to troubled areas in the early spring, just before the forsythia blooms. Don't do this at the same time as you plant your grass seed. It does actually contain some nitrogen, about 10% nitrogen, so you want to be careful not to overuse it. So just where you are concerned about the weeds. And it requires some time. Again, patience requires up to about 3 years to achieve maximum effectiveness. Encouraging natural predators by putting up bird feeders, bat houses, to attract natural predators of insects. Birds and bats in your yard will consume the insects, and attracting birds and bats will not increase the likelihood of them moving into your attic or wall spaces. So that's what you can do besides pesticides and herbicide alternative overview and why. And just a little note about different beneficial insects. Again, when we use pesticides, we may be killing inadvertently the things that would have been helping us out. Things like green lacewing, their larvae are voraciously eating insect pest eggs and larvae, including aphids, red mites, whitefly, leafhoppers, and mealybugs. Lady beetle larvae also beneficial and eat aphids, other scale insects, and mites. And damsel bugs are also another beneficial insect. So, and sometimes you can actually purchase these through specialty organic online shops. So that's another way to kind of avoid the pesticide use if you're having a problem. Okay, so fertilizer alternatives. So we prefer to let nature provide the nutrients. Fertilizers contain nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other elements that can help build the roots and strong roots in plants. But too much of a good thing can be bad. So unknowingly, many of us waste time and money by putting too much of this on our landscapes, often at the wrong time. And some of this is because our soil is not properly balanced. That is, it's either too acidic or alkaline to allow the plants to absorb the nutrients they need in the first place. So not only do your lawn and wallet suffer, the environment does as well, because the nutrients are not getting used where you wanted them to be used, and they end up running off and into our waterways. Generally speaking, lawns need much less fertilizer than advertised. Fertilizers that are not immediately absorbed by plants pollute our water, as I mentioned, and contaminate our drinking water and can cause algal growth, making swimming and boating unpleasant, and it can kill fish and other animals. So again, back to test your soil. Didn't we say that earlier? Yeah. So again, if there's only 2 things you remember, it's like, make sure that you have a sharp mower blade and test your soil, and see if you need to add lime, which many of us do because we have more acidic soils. So you want to make sure so once you test your soils, you can send this to the lab at the University of Massachusetts. Again, all of this information about where you can send it is in our Greenscapes guidebook that you can download for free. It'll give you all the details on where to go and a lot more information than I can give to you here. So again, add lime if your soil is acidic. You want the soil pH to be between 6 and 7. If it's below 7, it could be acidic. And that makes it more hospitable to weeds. I already mentioned the top dressing of compost can help your lawn, and we recommend this in the spring. Clover is a free source of nutrients. So not only if you sort of think about this as not a weed, but a beneficial plant, it actually introduces nitrogen into your soil. It retains that and fixes it into the soil. So it also is a very tough to withstand foot traffic, and it also provides like beautiful green foliage and small white flowers. Again, if you're worried about bees, you certainly can control the blooms with frequent mowing. It used to be that clover was part of any lawns, but over time the seed mixture has changed, and then part of that is because after World War II, there was a lot of nitrogen and fertilizer being produced for bombs that then had to be used someplace else, and it became part of the land care industry. So go back to clover; it's retro. And again, if necessary, and you need to use you need to use fertilizer, please use organic fertilizers, but test your soil first to see. And if you need it, only in the fall, if at all. So that's something that, again, you can find out more at our Greenscapes guide, which is on our WaterSmart.org website. All right, so composting. Composting is really black gold, is what we call it, and it is what you need to build healthy soils. And so and it also allows you to get rid of organic material out of your waste stream. An average household can compost between 500 and 1,000 pounds of organic material per year. So, for those of us who have to pay for our waste disposal, you want to get this out of your waste stream because you're paying for it. And it's relatively free. You can do it with a bin, or you can do what I do, which is just have an area in my yard with some chicken wire sort of fencing around it to keep it together. It's relatively easy. If you want the bin, we do offer that for sale through, I think, April 23rd this year. So please consider purchasing one through us this year, and we do that every year in the spring. So you want to collect compostable material, and any one of these things, could be gone into in more detail, and probably you can find out more. I'm just giving you the high overview. But you'll need, for composting, you'll need both brown and green materials. And brown materials are high in carbon, but not necessarily brown in color. Brown materials include like dried leaves, paper, and woody type materials. Green materials are not necessarily green in color, but they're moister and higher in nitrogen, and they include things like kitchen scraps, grass clippings, and coffee grounds. No meat. We don't put meat into our compost. And then you want to start by putting a shovel full of dirt into your bin, and that serves as sort of a starter to introduce the microorganisms that will help deteriorate and make the compost. And then add alternating layers of the brown and green materials, trying to follow the 3 browns to 1 green ratio. Add water when you start so that your pile's damp, sort of like a wrung out sponge, but not wet. This is critical. You only want damp materials that will decompose, and add water whenever it feels dry. And you want to keep that pile aerated. Composting critters need oxygen to breathe, to do their work, and so every time you add material to your pile, you want to fluff and turn over the pile with a hoe or a pitchfork. And the more you aerate, the faster the composting process occurs. And so, when will your first batch be ready? Sometime after about 6 to 12 months to make compost. And finished compost should be dark in color, be rich, look like rich brown soil. For most garden applications, it's fine to use that compost that still has some recognizable bits of leaves, twigs, eggshells. It'll finish decomposing in the soil. You want to mix that compost 1/2 to 3 inches of finished compost into the top 4 inches of soil about 1 month before planting. Compost can be applied, as I mentioned, as a top dressing in the garden throughout the summer. All right. Watering your lawn. There's a lot of myths out there, I think, around the need to water your lawn. and we want to sort of debunk them for you. There's been some social science around this, that people who are watering their lawn think that their grass is dead, and when it turns brown. But it's not dead. It's actually just sleeping. It's dormant, and it will come back when it rains again. Most of the grass in our area is Kentucky bluegrass, and most grasses are really cool weather, uh, sort of wet weather plants. They're not native to the area. They came over, this sort of idea of the lawn came over from England, which is sort of wet and cool compared to us. And so when it's brown, it's sleeping, and it's dormant. And so if you leave it alone in the fall or whenever we start to get rain, it'll green up again. It also is an indication that we have lack of precipitation, which means that our water supplies are in short supply. So putting it on our lawns is exacerbating the sort of problem of not having enough water for things like the fish that I showed you earlier. Another myth that we found when we went out and asked people about what they thought about watering their lawn was that it doesn't take too much to water my lawn, that it wasn't that much water. But it's really not true. Watering lawns can be one of the most consumptive uses of water. The recommendation is to water an inch of water once a week for your lawn. If you've got an acre yard and you're doing that, that's 26,000 gallons of water, which is more than a standard 16 by 32 foot swimming pool. The state's recommended use per person per day is 65 gallons per person per day. So just to give you some scale around that, that's a lot of water. And we're often using drinking water, quality water, to put on our landscape because it's coming from the public water supply, which is meant to be used for ingesting and cleaning, and not necessarily for outdoor use. So how much water do you use? Well, you can actually find out by just simply getting your water bill. We recommend getting your summer water bill because that's the one that would be where you might see the highest use. And just perform this simple calculation. Take the total number of gallons used in the billing cycle, divide that by the number of days in that billing cycle, and then divide that by the number of people in your household to get the gallons per person per day. And the goal here is to see how close you come to the 65 gallons per person per day or less. If your water bill is in cubic feet, you want to multiply your consumption in cubic feet by 7.48 to convert it to gallons, and then do the same calculation. If the way that your bill comes is in hundreds of cubic feet or CCF, then multiply by 748 and then do the calculation. I do this. I think it's a good practice to do this, and I have found that generally speaking, our family is using about 55 gallons per person per day, and the majority of people really should be in that range because we know that it's really not a large part of our population that's using water on the outdoors. But I think it's a useful thing for people to check and to know whether to kind of have a sense of what the benchmark should be. Okay. Okay, if you are going to have an irrigation system or you've inherited one in your landscape, the best setting for an automatic irrigation system is off. They don't have brains, they only have clocks. And so if you have an automatic irrigation system and it's set to go off all the time, it will, right? So that means it's going off when the lawn may not use the water or the plants don't need the water. And so we just recommend, please, to just turn off the automatic system and monitor your lawn and the weather, and then decide when it needs irrigation. And you can set your system the night before to turn on at dawn, but remember to turn it off again the next morning. You want to use smart controllers, which are weather-based. They can reduce the use of water by 15%. These controllers apply the correct amount of water needed by continuously monitoring conditions. In the in support of you keeping your automatic system off, put the controller someplace visible that you can see it. So it's not in a hidden corner of the basement. It's easy to move, or have an electrician move the controller to a prominent place to make you use your system, make it easy to use more responsibly. If you're going to upgrade or installing new irrigation, drip irrigation is the best way to go. It's the most efficient way to get the water right to the roots. It causes less disease, fewer weeds, and it uses about 25 to 30% less water than the above ground sprinklers. And then please keep your system maintained. You want to do that. This says 2 to 3 years. So I would say every other year, you want to have a professional, a certified landscape irrigation professional come out and adjust the sprinkler heads, make sure that it's balanced, so that you can make sure that you're not throwing water inefficiently. And then last but not least, and maybe I would put it up first, is get a rain barrel. The average roof can shed over 5,000 gallons of water during the summer months, and rain barrels and cisterns can collect clean rainwater from your roof so you can stockpile it when it's plentiful and use it later. A 1/4 inch of rain on a 1-car garage can fill a 55-gallon rain barrel. Rain barrels are great for watering small areas by hand. Larger cisterns can be connected to automatic irrigation system, and you can get a rain barrel through our rain barrel sale right here at the North and South Rivers Watershed this spring. So that's my talk on irrigation systems. Oh, not quite done, sorry. If you must water, right, let's do it responsibly. First, you want to do the walk test. And the walk test is a way for you to see if your lawn actually needs the water. Simply, walk across your lawn and look back at your footprints. And if you can still see your footprints after a few minutes, your grass is needing water. It's not rebounding. And when you do water, please water deeply, but infrequently. And that will encourage longer roots and allow your lawn to live during a drought when you aren't going to be able to water. You want to water at dawn, or as close as possible to daybreak. It's 10 times more effective, and it'll help prevent growth of fungus. Let's see, what else? Water plants, not pavement. I think that's an obvious one. But again, if you have an automatic sprinkler system, you can have these heads adjusted by a certified landscape irrigation professional. You want to check the weather forecast, and always, if you see water coming, in the rain forecast, please don't water. And abide by watering restrictions, even if you have a well, and of course abide by your local watering rules. So that's just some tips on how you can water responsibly. All right, so there's a lot to maintaining a lawn, and so one of the things that you can do to get out of having to deal with thinking about all of these sharp mower blades and when to water your lawn and when there's a restriction in place is to really just get rid of some of it and go native. Try to plant something instead of grass. And you don't have to do this all at once. You can do it over time. It's a process. And you want to choose the right plants for the right spot. Make it native. Cluster the plants. Use mulch and ground covers, and avoid invasives. There's a lot more to this that I'm not going to go into here. That you can learn from some of our other talks online and through other resources that as I mentioned, the Greenscapes guidebook provides you types of plants and other information that I think you'll find useful to sort of navigate putting in new native plants. So one of the big issues for us too is this model that we have of pervious lawns, buildings, and driveways. Impervious just means that water can't sink down into the ground. That we have this high water use or demand of non-native ornamentals. They're not adapted to the climate. We have this high input of chemicals and fertilizers. And then these are high maintenance, little ecological value, high impact on water resources with little site specificity. So here's the natural water cycle. We have, when it rains, about 50% is going up into evaporation, 10% into runoff, and 40% goes down into the ground and percolates into our groundwater table. So in a natural environment, that's the natural water cycle that we would see, is that about 10% is running off the landscape. Not very much. A lot of it's going down into the ground and recharging our groundwater and water table. But when we develop our land with, paved surfaces and even our lawns, they're compacted and the water runs off. It can't soak back into the ground. And so that increases the runoff by 60 to 90%, depending on how much is developed. That obviously has an impact on the health of our waters. So we want to talk a little bit about making rain an asset in your yard. And this is sort of a hydrologically functioning landscape that we've kind of drawn here. Some land would be in conservation, or would have more of a conservation feel with trees and native trees and shrubbery. You might have amended soils, as I mentioned, with good hardy compost being put in here. You would have a rain barrel on one or all of the gutters of your home. You would have porous pavement on your driveway, or porous interlocking, bricks. You would have rain gardens that would take rainwater from areas in your property that it's draining off of and soak it back into the ground. And in some cases, even some open drainage. So that gets us to making a rain garden. Again, there's a lot more to this that I'm going to share with you tonight, but it's an overview about how you can build a rain garden. But by capturing runoff, rain gardens prevent the pollution from going down the storm drain and into our rivers and ponds, and they replenish our groundwater. And they can be beautiful features. So, this is just a cutaway as if to show you that it's basically a concave bowl that you're making with layers of different kinds of mulch, sand, topsoil, compost, and different plants. And they're usually located in a low-lying area where rain would normally collect. Again, there's lots of information through our Greenscapes guide that show you step by step. Here's a little bit of the steps. You want to choose a good location, as I mentioned, a low spot in your yard. You want to pick it where water already collects or where runoff from your driveway or downspout can be diverted. You do want to make sure that it's, away from your foundations and septic system drain fields, and you want to keep a buffer between downspouts in your garden. You want to measure your garden. It should be 20 to 30% of the drainage area that you're treating. So if you're treating runoff from a 1,000 square foot driveway, you want a 200 to 300 square foot garden. It can be any shape you want, rectangular, amorphous blob, and it should be graded slightly so water flows towards the center, about 6 inches lower in the center than from the edges to provide for overflow from heavy rains. You want to check the drainage, okay? So it's important that your rain garden drains. All of that's about the soil. So you want to determine if the water can infiltrate fast enough by digging a hole approximately 8 inches deep and pouring in a few inches of water. If the water drains lower than an inch an hour, you will need to add at least 6 inches of gravel to the bottom of your rain garden. Essentially, this is it's a kind of a glorified French drain. The preparation of the soils is important. This matrix of sand and compost in topsoil with no clay is important for the drainage and for the plants. And you can select a variety of native low maintenance flowers and grasses that will provide color and interest and habitat. You want to just make sure that they can tolerate both wet and dry conditions. As you see, rain gardens will fill with rainwater periodically. And so you need to, of course, select the right plants for the right conditions. And then plant the garden. Add about 2 to 3 inches of shredded hardwood mulch to keep the soil moist and able to soak up the rain. And of course, you're going to have to keep it weeded to, well, the mulch should help you, but it does require maintenance like any garden. And it should drain. So you shouldn't see water standing in this. It should drain within 12 to 48 hours. This picture right here is of a rain garden at the Mass Audubon North River Wildlife Sanctuary that we helped to install as a demonstration. Here's some rain garden plant ideas. Sunny native plants for wet soils could be Joe Pyeweed. That's beautiful plant with the monarch on it. New England aster, you may be familiar with. Sedge, switchgrass, that's the lower left picture is the switchgrass. Cardinal flower is the lower right, and so on. So there's lots of different plants that you can put into your rain garden that will soak up the nitrogen and provide habitat and get the water clean and back into the ground. So for resources, please sign up to our e-news at nsrwa.org. It's at the bottom of the page that you can sign up with your email address. And please go to our WaterSmart section of our website and go to the Greenscapes section. And in that, there'll be, it's chock full of information, but one of the things that I really recommend is you get the Greenscapes guidebook. It's downloadable and is really includes all of the information that I just talked to you about tonight. You can also, of course, email either myself or our WaterSmart South Shore manager at our emails listed below. And I hope that this overview provides you with some more information and empowers you to help us all protect our water resources here on the South Shore. So thank you very, very much for listening, and I hope to see you on the rivers.